Mysticreader's Review, King Richard III, edited by Pat Baldwin and Tom Baldwin, Cambridge University Press. Richard has had his evil way in every respect up to this point. All his rivals, Edward, Rivers, Grey and Hastings, have succumbed to his evil quest. Richard is determined to prove a villain, and in his murderous quest for power he has to marry his own niece in order to secure his place on the throne. A setting for this crucial scene is outside the king's palace, just before Richard and his train set off to war. The scene begins on page 165, but until page 171 Richard is off stage. In these 6 pages Richard may not be present physically, but he is certainly an omnipresent character. As the 3 women, Elizabeth, the Duchess and Margaret, blame each other for all the lives Richard has taken, we cannot but sense that Richard is behind the scenes, listening attentively like a fox to everything which is being said. In page 171, the Duchess, who is Richard's own mother, tells him, "O she that might have intercepted thee, by strangling thee in her accursed womb." This quote immediately sets the scene for a dialogue packed full of insults. Richard's own mother tells him, in his face, how desperately she wants him dead. This may seem cruel, almost inhumane to the audience, but we must remember that had the Duchess done such a terrible deed, innumerable lives would not have been lost. The Duchess seems to tell us that it is better for one to die, if on the other hand others are saved. Still, in page 171, the Duchess asks Richard a rhetorical question. Where is the brothers Clarence and little Ned Plantagenet? We all know that they were brutally killed by Richard. Richard is depicted as a Machiavellian character, not caring for anything except power and the throne. This reflects the real politic of the time, 15th century England. The moment where the Duchess exits the scene is where Richard asks Elizabeth for her daughter's hand in marriage. Just before leaving the scene, Margaret makes a prediction of death. "Bloody thou art, bloody will be thy end." This phrase shows us how tense and cold the relationship between Richard and the Duchess truly is. Incredibly enough, it is Elizabeth who brings forth this argument. "I have no more sons of the royal blood for thee to slaughter. For my daughters they shall be praying nuns." Richard should give up. Even before starting to beg for the hand of Elizabeth's daughter, he has just been told that rather than marrying him, Elizabeth's daughter will become a nun. Richard, though, is a strong, bold character. He stops at nothing. He even tries to reject the blame of being a killer in line 223. "You speak as if that I had slain my cousins." To be able to refuse, he must be very secure in himself, and stubborn at the same time. But as the scene continues, Richard's boastful and arrogant mood softens. He becomes more open to dialogue, and in the end he almost admits his guilt, as he says in lines 298 to 299. "If I did take the kingdom from your sons to make amends, I'll give it to your daughter." Richard has to amend something. But what? Obviously he has recognized the deaths of his cousins. As he later says, "If I have killed the issue of your womb," we know that Richard is risking everything to achieve his goal. Richard is forced to act kindly, and in page 183 Elizabeth poses a series of questions, displaying the fact that she is getting more and more furious, despite him being kind. The use of stichomatia demonstrates the altercation between Richard and Elizabeth through the use of repeats and alliteration. Elizabeth stresses the fact that Richard is a villain, as she says from line 372 to 377. In page 185, Richard continues to search for an oath which is acceptable to Elizabeth. He comes up with the future. There, in page 185, the Lexis is almost entirely written in the future tense, with some use of the conditional. The key moment is on page 187. The sly, cunning Richard overloads Elizabeth with kind words and eventually gets what he wants. Elizabeth suddenly gives in, after a 5-page worth battle with Richard. There is still time for one last true glimpse of Richard's relationship with Elizabeth. After she exits the scene, Richard tells the audience in a monologue, "Relenting, fool, and shallow changing woman." We know now that Richard played the actor's part all throughout the scene. He truly hates and disdains Elizabeth. This is further highlighted by the use of the derogatory statement, in which first he respects her and then he insults her. This reveals his double-faced nature and his cold, tense relationship with Elizabeth. ESP, 14 years old, by Mysticreader.